Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of the Last Night's Game podcast. I'm your host, Amy Butch on Siegfried. And today we're talking about the college football playoffs. This is bound to be the hottest topic over your holiday break because there's so much happening and there's so much pressure and there's so much money going into this. But we have the stories that will help you have the conversation around college football playoffs that don't really have a lot to do with the stats of what's happening on the field. And here to join me to talk all about football and the world of madness that is happening right now is Scott. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. And college football playoff and bowl season is part of the holiday season. We've got a ton of conversation starters, like you said, that have actually nothing to do with football and just off the field antics and great debates that you can really talk to anyone, anywhere, holiday parties, Santa Claus, anyone.
Well, it's interesting because not that long ago, we were simply sending people to bowl games and we had sort of the top four bowl games and they would compete. Those teams would then compete for the national championship. And we had this playoff, which rolled out a few years ago, 3 years ago. It all blends together at this point. But we
One
had
of
the
those,
football,
one of those numbers.
the playoffs that sort of ensued because people were feeling like, hey, this isn't fair. Who goes where wasn't going to be the true champion of college football. And so they put in these playoffs. And there's a committee that essentially takes the rankings and then uses their own discretion to put teams into the playoffs. There's 12 teams in the playoffs. And there's always some controversy. So that actually just leads me into our first conversation of if you're going to fire up a sports fan and you're going to fire up a college football fan, what are you talking about when it comes to the college football playoffs?
Standing up for yourself.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Like you said, there is a college football playoff committee who selects the teams. There's 5 teams guaranteed to get in, the top 5 conference champions. And then after that, there's criteria and whatever they want to do when they meet. And it's not
Okay.
necessarily a refined process at this point since we're only a few years in.
And so these conferences you're talking about, that's names like you might hear the SEC, the ACC. You're hearing these Big 10, Big 12. Those
Yes.
are conferences which
Mhm.
have a host of teams. And the SEC being sort of the powerhouse, if you will, the perceived powerhouse, because we will talk about this in just a second, wanting to get all their football teams in because the
Yes.
conferences make more money the more teams they have in the playoffs or in bowl games. And so this leads us into this fire up a sports fan.
Yes, it does. And a team with a loose affiliation to a conference, which is Notre Dame, they are an independent, which is very rare nowadays. So they don't have a conference really necessarily fighting for them, although they are in the ACC technically. They were projected all year on every selection show, which they start midway through the season, to make the playoff. And even going into the last weekend where they picked, they were ranked to make the playoff. And then I think to everyone's surprise, Sunday morning when we woke up, we saw that they had been left out of the playoff. And there's one of the great debates of all time in the history of football that we'll have about this. And they did not really take too kindly to being left out.
Yep. So, kind of how it happened, and I'm going to try to summarize it in my best
Mhm.
sports knowledge possible. They lost to Miami early in the season. They were playing better than Miami and better than Alabama, who were two that kind of trumped them and jumped over them in the rankings. Alabama was 10-3, Miami also 10-2. We were 10-2. I say we because I have to admit I am a Notre Dame alum, so therefore I am a little biased, but also I respect the game and how it happens. But, it was really kind of confusing on how that all came together, but once again, that goes to, SEC team, right? Alabama somehow got on there with a worse record, and so it's been really interesting to watch that debate on how that's all happened, and obviously, my algorithm feeds me the Notre Dame feed, and Notre Dame did something really unprecedented. They said, thanks for not picking us for the college football playoffs. We're not gonna go play in any bowl games. We don't want a consolation prize, which made us sad for those of us who wanted to go to the Pop-Tart Bowl. But
Yes.
they basically said, "Screw you, we're taking our ball and going home." And there's multiple perspectives on that, but what's your take on it?
First of all, I was going to say the sweatshirt was going to give away your Notre Dame
You can't really
allegiance.
see it though, my hair's covering up. There you go.
There it is. We are biased, but this is an unbiased show. So we'll give it from perspective. There's quite a few ways to take it, that they're kind of being I've heard the word crybabies and not playing and, just walking away. Or you look at it from a point that we're making, standing up for yourself, as to where they feel they kind of got screwed in this whole process. They're going to lose out on a lot of money and they could easily have won the national championship. And a team like James Madison, no offense, who's a 21-point underdog to Oregon coming up, really doesn't necessarily have much of a chance. So how do you leave a team that a lot of people think could win, possibly the whole thing, out? So they decided not to play. And there is a money perspective to this. Their allegiance is to NBC, which they've had their games shown forever on exclusively on NBC, Peacock, and ESPN hosts the selection shows, host all the playoff games and even the bowl games, which is the Pop-Tart Bowl, they were slated to play in, which we were hoping to go to. So from that perspective, they kind of said, why would we, bring our national brand to your television networks and make a ton of money for you guys when it kind of feels like they conspired to possibly screw them over. So they decided not to play one at all, let their kids enjoy the holidays, get healthy, draft eligible players, get ready for the draft, and kind of just reset for next year and study for their finals.
That's right.
Let's not forget studying.
Well, it was interesting
Yes.
because I kinda mentioned that to you. I'd seen a couple of commentators say, "Well, that was selfish that Notre Dame chose not to play because their seniors are missing out on a game." And you really had that good perspective of, like, this allows them to get healthy, not get hurt in a game, prepare for the draft because does this one game make a difference? I mean, if they went and had a phenomenal if you were Jeremiah Love and you had a
Uh-huh.
phenomenal game, you're still having a phenomenal season. So it doesn't does that really impede your draft ability? And so that was an interesting perspective that I thought that you brought up that I didn't really think of.
Yes, I mean, and what happens if we've seen countless, examples of a player who's going to be very high in the draft, like a Jeremiah Love, and go out and break his leg or tear ACL, Achilles, and never be the same. So from that perspective, it kind of seems pointless if you
Yeah,
think about it that way.
although you did bring up a really good point. If you played in the Pop-Tart Bowl,
Mhm.
you can eat the trophy because it's a Pop-Tart.
I mean,
You can't eat a national championship trophy.
you cannot. So, I mean, in that regard, Pop Tart Bowl possibly could be. It is, I think they've dubbed it the People's Championship.
It
So, I
makes
mean,
sense.
eating a Pop Tart would be a lifetime dream, but also going in the top 5 in the draft would be a
Yeah,
dream.
you could buy a hell of a lot of Pop-Tarts if you go high in the NFL
And a
draft.
life size toaster and life size Pop Tarts to cook and eat
I bet Pop-Tarts could hook you up if you really, you
if
did
you
it
really
right.
wanted to. Yes.
Yep. Yep. No, I just think that was a really good perspective, and I know that's really a big conversation starter, and a big
Yes.
thing that's happening and people are talking about in the world of sports is sort of the annexation of Notre Dame,
Mhm.
and like you said, we brought in teams like James Madison and Tulane who've had great seasons, but
Yes.
how do they fare against an Ohio State? Probably not so well.
We'll see. I mean, Las Vegas is very good at setting spreads, and I think Tulane's about 16-point underdog, and James Madison is over a 3 touchdown underdog. So, I mean, that kind of says it right there.
Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about, check out our Betting on Sports podcast where Scott breaks that down because I ask a lot of questions around betting. So make sure you check that podcast out if you're not sure what we're talking about. We'll link that in the show notes as well. Now, if you don't like me, you don't have a team in the playoffs. Who am I cheering for?
Self confidence.
Okay.
This is Curt Signetti. If you have not heard of him, he is the head coach at Indiana, which traditionally has never been a powerhouse at football, kind of an afterthought. And in 2 years, he has brought his self confidence, his relentless ability to convince any player, no matter their skill level, that they can win. And it showed on the field this year with an undefeated season at Indiana, which is certainly no one saw coming 2 years ago. And he's kind of flipped college football on its head, 180 degrees, that now you have teams firing coaches who've been successful but haven't been able to win because they've seen what he's done in 2 years. And that's really just the most unprecedented thing we've really ever seen. And
Well,
his I was going to say his opening press conference when he took the Indiana job, he said, Google me, I win.
Mhm.
From there, he just stuck with it, never relented on his self confidence and his team's confidence.
I mean, it's been really interesting to
Mhm.
watch because Indiana doesn't have the NIL money, the name, image, likeness money coming in from all over the place to fund big players and keep them there and all those things. And they've just won. I mean, chemistry is a huge piece of winning, right? And it's so
Mhm,
we talk about this often. It's like money doesn't necessarily buy championships. You have a coach who believes in you
mhm.
and you guys win. Like it's phenomenal. I mean, I just love the story because he came in with such like an air to him, but
Yes.
he was also instrumental, well, I guess he was also instrumental in James Madison.
Yes, the aforementioned James Madison, which he was a coach at before Indiana. He brought them to prominence, set them up kind of for success, although he took a ton of players with him. He still brought that confidence and winning mentality to that program and got them to where they are before he left to go to Indiana. So I mean, if he could take credit for having two teams in the playoffs, technically.
I mean, he should. I mean,
He should, yes.
there's a shout out to my friends, my IU friends, because they're all amped. Like, it's really
Hmm.
cool to see, and this is something Indiana's more of a basketball school,
Yes,
and so it's neat to see this, and one thing I thought it was really interesting about the team, and I haven't watched a ton of Indiana games this year, and I watched when they played Ohio State.
yes.
And their quarterback went out, like, one of the first plays, he was kind of, I wouldn't say not he wasn't knocked unconscious, but he was hit real hard, and he comes out, and Mendoza is his last name, but then all of a sudden, another Mendoza comes in, and I was like, "Wait, I thought they said he was out for a play or 2." His brother is his backup quarterback.
Yes, he is. And it's very cool to see. They've got a great family story. You know, their mother's suffering from MS. So they've got kind of a great background. Inspiration is playing for her. So we've got brothers at starting and backup. And when they were blowing teams out, Mendoza would go in and you'd see fans online get upset that their starting quarterback's still in when it's actually his brother.
Yeah, and so Fernando Mendoza, the starting quarterback, he's but the top candidate for the Heisman.
Yes, he's played himself from really off the radar to Heisman this season, just like Indiana going undefeated. So he's certainly taken some of that bravado from Coach Signetti, who was also in the Nick Saban coaching tree. He was at Alabama for a few years, so he's got the Saban background like a lot of these coaches do.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Nick Saban was a longtime coach at Alabama. Sort of when name, image, likeness kinda happened, he sort of stepped aside because there's a lot of, like, business side that's not coaching and kind of the BS that goes into now what's happening in college sports, and I don't wanna say that in a
Mhm.
necessarily a bad way, but that's not
Yep.
something that a coach is here to do. Coach is here to coach a team. And so he sort of stepped aside, is now on ESPN College Game Day. He
Hmm.
and his wife, Miss Terry, who he talks all about, still doing their thing.
Yes.
But he has really bred this whole group of coaches, including, I think, one of the coaches at Texas Tech. Is that right as well?
His coaching tree is quite unbelievable. And he's got Dan Lanning in Oregon for sure. He was an assistant with him. So Kirby Smart at Georgia, like he's just got coaches everywhere.
Yeah.
Kiffin, who was in the playoffs and is not in the playoffs anymore.
Yeah, so
So
let's touch really quickly on Lane Kiffin. So Lane
self
Kiffin,
confidence.
with confidence, but was the head coach of Ole Miss, who is also in the college football playoffs,
Hmm.
and decided to leave to go to LSU, Louisiana State, who just fired their head coach, Brian Kelly, who happened to be a coach previously at Notre Dame. This is like a Days of Our Lives episode when it
It
comes to
is.
coaches. But Kelly got paid an obscene amount of money to not come to work at LSU anymore. And now they brought on Lane Kiffin,
Yep. Lane Kiffin took Ole Miss to the best season in the history of their school, basically, and he wanted to keep coaching Ole Miss as he was going to accept the LSU job, and Ole Miss stepped in and said, "No, we're not going to let you do that," and try to poach players and things like that. They kind of gave him an ultimatum, like you're going to stay here and coach at Ole Miss, but if you're leaving to LSU, you have to go. So he left, took some assistants with him, but they have allowed a lot of his assistants to go back and coach Ole Miss for the playoff.
which I
So
think is
really,
cool.
really, just Lane is the only person not there anymore at
Which
this
is
point.
so interesting. I guess you wanna win, but you also wanna set your program up for success in the future.
Yes.
And so it's this really fine line of also, like, if you're worried about him poaching players, what does it him being on the sideline have to do with any of that? I mean, sure, there's a chemistry, right? And
Yes.
you're playing for a coach that is no longer going to be there, so there's that part of it. But you also probably could have kept it all under the radar until afterwards. But it's one of those where it's like So you're sending that so assistant coaches can't recruit? He
Yeah,
can't pick up the phone? I say call someone, but no one calls anyone anymore. Can't pick up the phone and text someone? Like, if he's gonna take a player, he's gonna take a player. Forget it whether he's on the sideline or not.
absolutely. And I mean, Lane kind of brought it on himself, like openly flirting with Florida and LSU and sending his family on private jets to go check out the schools and interviewing. So he didn't do himself any favors. And
I don't think I knew that.
yeah, he was openly flirting. Lane's one for the theatrics and drama and he's basically a big troll. So he loves it. This is what he thrives on. Now
The game
he's
of
on,
all of this.
yes, and this will be his third SEC coaching job.
Okay, where was he before Ole Miss?
So he was at Tennessee, left Tennessee, went to USC, got left at the tarmac at
Oh,
USC, getting
that's right.
fired,
Yep,
and then went to Alabama, coached under Saban, and then to Ole Miss. Wait, no, he went to FAU after Alabama, and
Florida
then to
Atlantic,
Ole
okay.
Miss. So
Okay. But
Lane's got a lot going on.
he's had some good success along the
He
way.
has, yes, and that's why
But
he's so highly recommended.
my favorite storyline that, like, ties this whole thing in together, there was all this controversy in the beginning of the season that his daughter was dating somebody at LSU, a football player.
Mhm.
And so when you had the Ole Miss and the LSU matchup earlier in the season, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yes,
the heartstrings," and so on and so forth. And now he's coaching there with this kid.
he is coaching. It was, looking back, it's kind of a funny, storyline to look back that was going into that game and they went in and blew LSU out and intentionally ran ton of plays to make sure that linebacker Whit Weeks would be tired. I think he puked a few times during the game. But yeah, so his daughter's boyfriend Whit Weeks is like one of the top rated linebackers to go to the NFL, so he will probably not be there when Lane's there. But it's certainly, a great conversation starter.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna go back to once, this will lead us into our next one. But, like, he got paid well. 7 years, $91,000,000. I mean, that's insane money, and at the rate they paid out Brian Kelly that they fired, I think he was what, around $56,000,000 in payout, something along those lines?
Believe
Yeah, to leave. So, you know what? Set your family up for success if that's I part of it's the allegiance, but also, like, I get it.
91 million. No one's offered us that money, so I can't really necessarily say I
No,
wouldn't
I
take
take
it.
$91. I mean, your go-to conversation starter with college football fans is what?
Money.
I
It's all
mean,
about the money. That's what the
yep.
playoffs all about.
Well, right, there was discussion, and I don't think there's been a decision, but I remember some discussion at the beginning of the year about maybe they wanna expand the playoffs from 12 to more teams because, once again, it's more money.
Always expansion. Look at March Madness. It keeps expanding, and it's all about money. So we had no playoff, then we had the playoff. We have a 12-team playoff, and there's just constant conversation. It's going to go to 14, 16, 24. It probably won't stop
World to your
until they get
oyster.
to 24. Yes.
Well, and someone's
I was gonna,
always gonna be left out.
there's always going to be a debate on who's left out, no matter how many teams. March Madness, if we have 76 teams, that 77th and 78th team are going to be upset. So it
Mhm.
just gives everyone sports banter to speak about. That's really
That's
what it
right,
is, and money.
and money. I mean, what was really interesting is you were talking about, name, image, likeness money. We were talking about it in Indiana and how they're definitely not up there in the anywhere close to the top. But we had Texas Tech as the number 2 team in spending, or I guess, is it spending or earning? I guess depending on how you look at it.
Spending.
Raising
Raising.
raising
We'll go
NIL money,
raising. That's a
spending NIL
better term.
money. Yep.
Raising.
They're top, and they're in the college football playoffs. But number
Yeah.
1 with quarterback Arch Manning, who is the nephew of Eli and Peyton Manning.
Mhm.
Texas is number 1 in the spend, but they are not in the playoffs. So once again, money does not buy a championship.
It does not. And there's also a debate there for Texas. They went up to Ohio State to start the season and lost that game. So do you get penalized for scheduling a tough team to start the season? Why not just schedule 3 lower ranked programs and just get wins? So
Notre Dame did. They got
another debate
penalized.
there. They did.
They lost by 2 points to Miami.
And Texas A&M, who were both in the playoff.
Right. So the conversation, yes, is you're usually better off to lose in the beginning of the season,
Yes.
ideally to a good team.
Yes.
And so, yeah, very, very interesting. But once again, it's interesting to talk about and the money the schools receive. So we kind of talked in the beginning about the conferences. So it's really, I think, does the money go to the school or the conference, or how does that work? Maybe I'm not.
So the money
A
goes
little
to
bit
the
of both.
the money
It goes
goes
to
to
the
the
conference.
conferences and then distributed amongst the schools within that conference. So with 5 teams from the SEC simply just making the playoff, that's $20 million
Right.
to
So
distribute
you've got
amongst schools, and that Big Ten has 12 million just for making the playoffs. So
right,
it's
so
very
you said make
financially beneficial to make it.
it I mean, absolutely, making the CFP, you get $4,000,000. Now, granted, there's additional expenses that come in having to play another game. They now have home games for the top-ranked team, so there's expenses there, there's expenses getting your team, etcetera, etcetera. But it's come down to, I mean, you're looking at 4,000,000 for making the CFP, the college football playoffs. If you get to the quarterfinals, that's another 4,000,000. If you make it to the title game, it's 6,000,000. So, I mean,
Yes,
it's that
a lot
all
of
adds
money.
up, right? I mean, it's a lot of money.
And that money equally distributed throughout the conference makes every team a little bit better, gives them
Mhm.
opportunities to build facilities and give players options that they wouldn't have had going to a different school that's not in the playoff.
Yeah,
So it's
and it
really it's
continues.
a trickle down effect,
Yeah.
and ESPN benefits a lot from having all these games as well.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I mean, they pay a lot for it, but of course they this time of year, there's NFL on, but, like, this is the stuff people are watching, and
It
these
is.
games actually start on Friday, December 19th. So,
Yes.
buckle up because forget holiday parties, you're doing that all day Saturday on the 20th.
Yes. Holiday parties will likely have a college football playoff game on in the background, I would
Heck, you
guess.
were at a wedding last week and you all had your phones on the table, so allegedly. Hey, people had it at my wedding, like, if you get married during football season, it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, I think that was Michigan State. I think Michigan State like blocked a field goal or punt to win and upset
What, my
everyone
our
at
wedding?
your
I
wedding.
don't remember.
Yes. Yes.
I don't remember, but it was one of those where I
You
was
were
like, "Oh,
busy
I
doing
see
other
some." Yeah, but I was checking in on the scores because it was also Notre Dame, USC, I think, was around that time too, and so it just is what it is.
Yep.
If you get married
College
during
football
March
playoff,
Madness,
all of it.
it just is what it is.
It is what it
So,
is.
is there anything you have to share with us about the college football playoffs that we haven't addressed already?
I think we covered a lot in this topic.
I think we covered a lot of ground, and hopefully you've all learned something to talk about. My favorite thing when I get to these is like, gosh, can you believe the money they're spending on that they're earning or spending on college
Yeah,
football? I love these little nuggets and the fact that you may know of Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and Arch Manning, who plays for Texas, and Texas spends all this money but didn't make it. So these are like fun little nuggets that I use to drop in, and it's so
absolutely.
fascinating. Yes, last week I was at a board breakfast in Chicago, and I was in the middle of the table, and I was like that conversation person who like kind of made stuff cross the table. But sports was such a big piece. Now, granted, it's an investment group, so there's not many women in there. But
Yeah.
like what we talk about on this podcast and what I learn every week talking to you help fuel that conversation, and where I made all these additional connections with people that I would have never really, like how am I gonna like it's so much harder to dig out what's happening in your kids' world and your business world. Like this was such a
Yes.
big conversation leading into that. And so it was really fascinating. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing your insights because it's invaluable to me as your co-host, but it's invaluable to those who are listening. So hopefully it gives you something to talk about in the world of sports. And we wish you all a happy college football playoffs.
And happy holidays.
That too.